Thank you. So while we get Unacast all set up, let me read a little intro of our next presenters. So Unacast is the leader in human mobility and location data space, and today they'll be showcasing their latest solution, Emerging Areas. So Madeline No was, after spending her first half of her career in retail and corporate strategies at a Fortune 500 retailer, Madeline turned her eye to the tech sector. Madeline worked in business intelligence at a marketing tech startup before joining Unacast's product team and brought her subject matter expertise to help Unacast expand into retail and real estate verticals. And I think this is a first. So we actually have one of their kind of partners joining us today on Virtual Demo Day. And we've got Sam DeLisi. Sam DeLisi is the operating partner at Modern. He has worked recently, he was most recently the global head of product management services at WeWork. He was recruited to stand up their third-party management business. Sam has 40 years career in property management leadership and commercial brokerage roles with Newmark, King Frank, CBRE, and the list goes on. So thank you guys so much for joining us. You're both on mute. There we go.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
So great, thanks Bethany for that intro. So as Bethany mentioned, today we're going to be discussing our newest solution, Emerging Areas. The topic du jour, as it has been since basically the beginning of this year, is how COVID-19 has upended our lives. And one of the effects that we've heard stories about is people leaving cities en masse. And as a result, the residential and commercial landscape is literally changing at an unprecedented rate. But with human mobility data, we have a unique capability to accurately capture these movements and actually illustrate what is happening with migration in the US. And that's why we're really excited to talk to you today about our latest offering. So why did we build Emerging Areas? We've seen that with all this uncertainty, real estate professionals, they might struggle with understanding what are the hot new markets, but also which areas are in decline. And Sam, you come from the real estate industry. What is your perspective and how this affects real estate in particular?
Well, real estate is still a business where it's all about location, location, location. So having the opportunity to get ahead of your competitors and understand where the markets are going. What if you're in a market that's losing people, then you're going to want to figure out, maybe I should be reducing my rents. If you already own in a market that's hot, maybe I should be increasing my rents. It's all about location. And as people migrate, the value of locations are going to change.
Yes, exactly. And that is exactly why we built this. So, just out of curiosity, we do have a little poll here for the audience. I would love to know how many of you guys think, how many people left Tribeca during the COVID pandemic. So basically since March. And for those of you who are not familiar with the area, I'm just gonna do a little bit of a blurb from Google. So Tribeca is known as a hip area for all of its old industrial buildings. Many of them have now turned into residential loft space. There are cobblestone streets, they're lined with trendy boutiques and restaurants, and they also have historic commercial buildings, such as the New York Mercantile Exchange edifice. That dates actually from 1884. Weekends are relatively quiet, again, per Google, through Washington Market, the Washington Market Park and Hudson River Park. They draw a lot of families. And this is also where the Tribeca Film Festival takes place every year. So Sam, I would ask you to participate, but because I kind of told you the answer before this, I'm just gonna ask you to not give any hints to the audience.
No hints.
No hints.
Yeah, Tribeca is one of my favorite areas of New York. Great neighborhood. Hard to imagine people are moving out, right?
Hard to imagine. So I don't know, Bethany, if everyone has submitted their answers already. but I'm going to guess that most people have submitted their answers. So
Things are slowing down. I just chatted you the results.
Perfect. So now that you guys have submitted your answers, I just want to add that as of 2016, the population of Tribeca was around 1,700. So that may or may not have influenced your answer.
17,000, 17,000,
17,000, yes, correct. Thanks for that correction, Sam. But we will find out what the actual answer is later in this presentation. So, really excited to talk to you guys today. We hope you'll learn a bit about Unacast, a bit about modern ventures as well, and then we'll jump right into migration and our latest offering, emerging areas, with 2 examples in action. And then we'll leave some time at the end for any questions that you might have. We'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback. So for those of you who are not familiar with Unacast, we are a human mobility data company. We're focused on understanding how people interact with places around the world. More specifically, though, we focus on building actionable insights from human mobility data. So data by itself, it's great, but data when explored and aggregated to answer specific questions or for solving a given use case, that's when it's truly powerful. So our insights are applicable across a multitude of industries, but these are the industries where we really spend a lot of our time, obsessing over, especially retail and real estate. Our solutions can help with a variety of problems. Some of them you see listed here, and you will see today how emerging areas can really help with real estate and asset management. So, Sam, would you agree that these are some of the key, let's call them functions or pain points in real estate?
Without a doubt, right? And specifically today, understanding retail, most retailers aren't paying rent. So you're going to need to understand how people are moving around, when activity starts to come back. Can we save our retailers? When should we expect to start finding rent, right? Getting rent. If you're an asset manager, certainly understanding what's happening around your properties is so critical right now for making decisions about that asset and how you're going to invest in it. If you're ready to sell it, what are you doing, right? How does that work? And this data, this information is so powerful. And then when you think about urban planning, right, I think about it from a developer standpoint. Where should I be developing? Why should I be developing there? Or should I hold off on developing in a market because we're seeing mass exodus, right? So all of this is incredibly important. And it's really interesting. I think every client that we have identified or introduced Unacast to, they all agree, and we are getting lots of proof of concept processes going in the sales process. So we're very excited about that many people agree with us.
That's fantastic. And you mentioned a bit how we're doing a lot of POCs, and the reason that we're able to do what we can do with human mobility data is Unacast really is the leader in leveraging human mobility for actionable insights. We are a Series B startup. We're backed by top VCs with quite a bit of funding, and 80 plus clients use our data and products around the world. And you might have actually heard about us recently in the news. A few months ago, we developed the social distancing scoreboard, which measures how people are reacting to social distancing measures in regional areas. And then we also had our retail impact scoreboard, which measures how reactions to these restrictions affected businesses across the US. So over 10 million users are using our free dashboards. And we've also been able to help multiple industries, such as pharmaceuticals, government, insurance, retail, and of course, real estate. And given that one of our key focus is real estate, the team has been hard at work since forever, thinking about what problems real estate professionals face in this new normal with COVID, and that's kind of what led us to building emerging areas. Before we actually go into the emerging areas solutions, Sam, can you tell us a bit about Modern Ventures as well?
Absolutely. Thanks, Manny. So we're a real estate and related industry. So think insurance tech, financial tech, venture fund, and really three legs to our stool. We invest in early firms, startups, not startups, but early stage firms, with $2 to $20 million in revenue. And we're in the process of raising another fund right now. Amazing how much interest there is in what we're doing. And then we have the Passport program, which is what we describe as a real estate immersion program. And so my partner, Sean Hill, and I, and Krishna Patrick, we're working very closely with the companies that join our Passport program and introducing them to people in our network, which is the third leg of our stool. And we're a bit unique in the this real estate function with regard to venture capital, in that we really look at all of the real estate food groups, from single family residential sales to multifamily to commercial, hospitality, industrial, across the entire spectrum. So we are working across the entire spectrum and introducing each of the companies in our Passport program into our network, and then that really creates a way for us to add some sweat equity before we make an investment. So a terrific program. We've had over 90 companies go through it, and very excited about how this process works with Unacast. And again, it's been very well received so far.
Awesome. Great to hear. And thanks for that additional plug on Unacast, Sam. So next, so as we mentioned before, we've heard anecdotes of people moving out of big cities during the pandemic, especially with work from home expanded. It's kind of hard to understand where people are spending their time now, and whether or not, it still makes sense to be tethered to the cities in which one works. So Sam, we talk about these anecdotal stories. Do you have any anecdotal stories that you can share, from the real estate market? Like, what are you and your co-professionals talking about?
Well, it's really interesting. We have a company in our portfolio called Suburban Jungle, which is a company that helps families as they are thinking about moving out of big cities, and how they identify where they want to move to. And Suburban Jungle has been performing at an amazing level because they have had so much activity from people leaving major cities, San Francisco, LA, New York, and moving to maybe to the suburbs, but maybe it's moving to an entire new city. And so that process is in fact happening, and I think we'll learn more about that as we go through this presentation.
Yeah. So basically, we all hear these stories, and we want to. It'd be great if we can just hear these stories and kind of just take them at face value and make decisions off of them. But it's important that we don't, because these decisions are actually they're not small decisions, right, Sam? Like, these are things that you guys have to spend quite a bit of time doing your research on. Would you agree?
Without a doubt. And, for the most part, everything else that you would be looking at is really dated, right? It's what's so exciting about what Unacast can do, because, you're working on mobility data, right? This is incredibly fresh data, and the ability to sort of look at just changes over time. What was it pre-COVID? What was it what did it look like in April? What did it look like in July? What is it today? The ability to really forecast from the amount of data that we can create and you can see is incredibly valuable as you're trying to decide what you should do with your next investment. how aggressive should I be about leasing something? Should I wait? Should I wait for the market to get a little higher and really push rents? There's lots of strategies associated with the data that you guys are creating.
That's absolutely great to hear. And we actually did a mini study on outflow from New York during the height of the pandemic. This is just a snapshot, but the dashboard is available for free on our website if you wanted to, just be curious and go in and take a look and see which are the areas people are going to if they're leaving New York. So Sam, I would imagine if I were an investment manager with holdings in New York City, this information would be gold.
Total gold. And where are they going, right?
Yep.
Because we're not just tracking the people, right? You're getting data on those individuals. And we'll learn more about that in this presentation. But gosh, if I'm looking for a certain demographic, and I want to know where they're going to, because that informs me as to where I should be investing. And then relative to what's happening in New York, again, what am I going to do to make my property stickier? How aggressive can I be to try and help reduce the negative impact on your properties in New York?
Yep, definitely. And it's, as you mentioned, I feel like this is something everyone is thinking about. Just the sheer number of articles that we've seen come out in recent days, everyone is trying to understand where are people leaving and where are they going. And it's not to say that there's no information out there. There are some, but the way that we see it, they're more like proxy metrics at best. Some are even more quite crude, like looking at the number of U-Hauls lined one after the other in a street and taking a picture of that, and then showing that to your friend, or God forbid showing that to an analyst and be like, hey, look at this, doesn't this mean a lot of people are leaving? So another one that people have been talking about is the number of hits Zillow gets, or the number of houses that are up for sale in a given area. It's not really a reliable sign of human migration per se. It may just mean that people are listing their houses, or they can just be researching an area. And then I think LinkedIn did something where they tried to look at migration based on people changing or updating their location. And, again, that doesn't really constitute as proof of migration, just more that someone finally decided to update their profile. So, Sam, just our perspective, but would love to hear your thoughts on these proxy metrics that people are using.
I think these are anecdotal and interesting, right? But they don't tell you, they're telling you Jacksonville is going to go up, up 10.7%, but they don't tell you where those folks are coming from. And so I think there's so much power in understanding the demographic of the people who are moving, where they're moving from specifically, where they're moving to. Again, if I'm an asset manager, I want to know what cities are heating up, and I'm going to want to understand what that demographic is of the people who are coming into these markets. I mean, I think it's so valuable. Work from home is going to change office space, but gosh, if everybody's moving to Boise, if there's a big bump in Boise, which is already a pretty interesting city, well, then maybe that becomes more interesting. And maybe those are areas that I'm going to really want to focus on in that marketplace. And so I think about it from a standpoint of, if I'm selling homes, right? If I don't have a big presence in Boise, I may want to get a big presence in Boise. I may want to buy a small firm there and build my brokerage business in that space. From a multifamily standpoint, same thing, right? Again, what this data allows you to do is better understand locations, and location is what this business is all about across every single piece of the spectrum, every vertical.
Exactly. And location data might be a bit nascent, but this challenge has existed, since forever. So real estate professionals, you guys have been using some sort of data, but the traditional data sets, I know people use our IRS data or USPS data, that lags quite a bit. They're also not as holistic. They don't capture the actual composition of the movers. And yes, ultimately you can get demographics from census and you can get tax returns and then tie them all together, but they are disparate data sets and they do take time to cobble together to make them useful. And Sam, if I understand correctly, a lot of real estate firms, they don't have the bandwidth to actually do all of this heavy lifting themselves. So, would love to hear from you. Like, what do you think are these the problems that you see, or are there some other problems that you and your team have experienced in working with these more traditional data sets?
Time lag is a huge issue. And, I think in terms of first movers, there's a little risk in being a first mover, but the upside is incredibly valuable. And so the ability to use data that is so current, it allows you to be a first mover without question. Then it's a question of how do I ingest this data? Larger organizations have business intelligence tools that, what's great about Unacast is you're actually, if you want to, you can buy the actual data stream and push it through your BI and start to manipulate that information. I don't think there's another real provider that's giving you access to that. So for big players that have that capability, holy cow, this is a game changer. I think relative to most of the firms in the space that don't have that capability, we have the ability to provide this information in an easily digestible way with insights and dashboards that could be very helpful and make you play a little bit like give you the ability to play like the bigger players, but without having that kind of investment. So I think, and because we're calculating, we're pulling in other data sets to really enrich and make the mobility data so much more robust, you can get a terrific picture of what's really happening on the ground in real time. So I think that's really important for people.
Sam, thank you so much for that. You actually kind of did the explanation of the solution for me. So that is great. It's always great to hear it from the mouth of a real estate professional such as yourself. So as Sam mentioned, what we can do is actually capture people's movements because we are using location data, and then we can tie demographics to that. So, by combining the change in population size as well as the demographics, we get a really good understanding of which areas are emerging, or as some would say in the industry, which are hot markets. So let's actually take a look at this in action. If you guys remember at the beginning of this presentation, we asked the audience, how many people do you think have left Tribeca? So just wanna, yep. So the correct answer is approximately 4,000 people, so 3,900 people. But what's interesting here is that there's also been an influx of people with an average income of $82,000. I think the current median average income current median income, last reported was around 140,000. So, there is a net flow of around minus 500 people, but we do see that people moving in, they have a lower median income than the people currently living there. So Sam, if you were to own properties in Tribeca, what sort of decisions do you think this would influence?
Well, first, this sort of matches what everything we're reading says, right? Rents are dropping in cities like New York and San Francisco because of the lack of demand. And you look at, if you're losing people who are making 140,000 and getting people who are making 82,000, sort of makes sense, right? Those $82,000 a year people are trying to take advantage of the cheap rents. Maybe it's easier access to their jobs, whatever the reason for that is. That's something that you'll learn as you dig into it a little further. But so that becomes really important. And certainly somebody whose average income is $82,000 can't pay as much in rent as someone at 140, right? So that's going to change that. It may change how you think about your retail tenants once you're able to put retail tenants back in spaces, because all of a sudden that demographic has really changed. And by the way, I want to know where those people who are making 140 grand are going, right? Where are they going? Those are important people. And I'm going to want to follow them a bit and then see what else we're seeing in the areas that they land in. And so this becomes, again, from a strategy standpoint, that's how you win the real estate business. It's information like this.
Yep, exactly. And, this is why we think our offering is, so much better than others. It's data that's based on real moves. It's monthly updates. We also have demographics attributes, so income of movers, and it's ready to use. So Sam, does this sound like a winning solution to you?
I think it's what it's all about, right? It's location, it's information, it's and it's drive it away today kind of information, right? I can use it immediately. So it's very valuable in the real estate world.
So we're a little short on time. So we had another example, and Sam, sorry, I know Chicago is
hometown. Love Chicago.
But in the interest of time, we'll definitely share this presentation with anyone who's interested afterwards. We also did a study on Chicago and analyzed similar stats: how many people moved in, out, and what was the change in the composition of the population there. So, as Sam and I mentioned, with this sort of data, you can really see how valuable it is for real estate professionals. We built the emerging areas solution with real estate professionals specifically in mind. Your problems are our problems, and we obsess over trying to help you solve your problems in the best way. So, if these are some of the questions that you obsess over and keep you up at night, please reach out to us at info@unacast.com. We would love to hear from you and see how we can best help you.
We want you sleeping well.
Yes, exactly.
Betty, we've got time for one question. Do you want to take it?
Yep, let's take the question.
I'm going to kind of combine two. So the question is, how do you collect your data? And then another question was basically about strength of data within regionality. So can you kind of cover those two things in 3 minutes?
Yep, definitely. So we work with app partners to receive, so it's location data based on GPS signals. We work with app partners to collect them in a privacy, GDPR, CCPA compliant way. And this data set in particular, as well as most of our data sets, are all aggregated up to a regional boundary or a time period. So it's all anonymized. And really what we're trying to do is show you guys trends over time and what's happening in large areas and large area movements.